If you've watched Game of Thrones, Moana, Gladiator, and Inside Out, you come to understand that there's something good about the storytelling that is so great. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 elements that you need to tell any story. By the end of this video, you get to understand why Disney is using them and why other movie companies are using these stuff. Hi, I'm Jam Ramsey, Dr. Spawn, and all I do is connect storytelling to anything fun. This video is divided into 5 key parts. You need all of these to tell stories. And the first element that is on our list is one that many people try to neglect and which is very important. This is the plot. So now, what is the plot? The plot is the journey in which your story is taken. Many times you have heard of the 3-act structure and the hero's journey. The plot is just from which end is your story moving to the other. Now let's think of Game of Thrones for example. In season 1, you come to see that all of the family, they kind of like scatter in season 1, but in season 8, all of them come back together. The journey that the story is using, moving from one step to another, most of the times you see it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, they try to explain what is happening. In the middle, something gets exciting, and in the end, something is resolved. So that's usually the plot. Another example could be the Lion King. You see Simba in the beginning. Simba and his father are out in the field. Simba loses his father in the middle, and then still in the middle of the story, he's growing up with his trees from the forest, and then by the end he comes back to challenge Scar and take his throne. So that's the setting, like the road in which our story is going through. It's very important that when telling stories, we should make sure we consider this. Now, you can have a good plot for a story, but you don't have characters in your story, which brings us to the next element, which is the characters. Let's think about The Rock. Think about Iron Man. Everybody loves these guys. And why do you love these guys? Because of the way they are. That's why now, if you are going out to tell stories, build characters in your story. Now, let's talk about John Wick, for example. John Wick is a favorite character that many people love him. And why do they love him? Because the person who wrote the story about John Wick made John Wick to be that kind of man who has flaw. He's entitled to some certain characteristics that a character has to have. They make him so much that he's relatable to us. Now, if you think about Moana, the story, and in Moana, they take a character like Maui. Everybody loves Maui because of the way he is, the way they build the character. So if you want to tell stories, you have to be able to build character. Now, there are different types of characters when it comes to storytelling. The first guy that we're going to be talking about is the hero. If you are going to talk about the story to your audience or even writing a movie or even your YouTube video that you want to make, you have to have a main character who is always the hero. Someone who everybody that is watching the movie or listening to your story is going to be looking up to. The hero is always the person who has something to achieve or to complete in your story. Now, we move on to the antagonist in your story. The antagonist is usually the person who is considered to be evil, someone who is against the hero. That's the antagonist in a story. We also have the mentor. A mentor is someone who is guiding the hero in a story. So if, for example, you wanted to tell a story to people here, you were going to like make it in such a way that as you're telling the story, there should be one person that is within your story that everybody is looking up to. And then now you can bring in another character, maybe the mentor, that's going to be guiding that person. And then you can bring in someone who is going to be a conflict to the hero. That, okay, now this is the antagonist. Now, the hero is also usually regarded as the protagonist of the story. In storytelling, we have what we call side characters. For example, if you've watched How I Met Your Mother, you come to understand that Ted is the main character and Barney is the side character. Side characters are those characters who are put into stories so that they can spice up the story. For example, in Moana is the main character and Maui is the side character. Now, you cannot tell a story or even in a movie and put a character to be perfect, especially the hero. The hero must have flaws. A hero should have the good side and the bad side to make a character perfect. After you master the plot and the character, the most interesting part is this, because you have to take note of this. This is the next element, which is the setting. If you look in every story, there's always a setting. And if you create a story without a setting, many people are not going to be drawn to your storytelling. For example, let me even talk about you. You can just literally see a picture from Moana's movie and you know that this is Moana. If you see a picture somewhere, you can be able to identify that, okay, this part like this was found in this movie. When we are talking about the setting, we're talking about where the story is taking place, the environment where the story is taking place. And as a storyteller, if you want to talk about the environment where the story is taking place, you need to be able to talk about the 5 senses. You need to be able to tell us how the place smells, how the place sounds, and how people feel in that place. So when you talk about the setting, for example, in Game of Thrones, you know that, okay, moving to the north, you see the Lord, King's Landing, and if you go down, you see these other places like this. Another important example here could be the movie Coco. The environment makes us to feel like we're there. Like, for example, he lives in his world before going to the world of the dead, and when he reaches the world of the dead, you're kind of feeling feeling like, okay, this setting in this place, I'm feeling like, okay, I'm in this kind of place, I'm with the dead. It's kind of like, it's relatable. You're feeling like you're relating to them. The next element on our list is actually the best, and it's one that even YouTubers up to now are still using. Storytellers use them, everybody use them, and this is called the conflict. If you've watched videos on YouTube or you've watched movies, you understand that conflicts are always there. What is a conflict? First of all, a conflict is something that happens in a story that needs to be resolved. So now, if you tell a story without conflicts, people might be drawn, or their audience might be drawn not to watch the story or even listen to you. But now when you bring in conflicts, for example, let's take the movie Money Heist. If you watch Money Heist, you understand that the person who wrote the movie Money Heist, at every instance there were conflicts, there's tension. You want to see how are these people going to resolve this issue. Now when it comes to conflicts, there are different types of conflicts in storytelling. First of all, we have the man versus the man conflict. What is this? The man versus the man conflict is a conflict where, for example, Superman fighting against Batman, the evil guy fighting against the hero. So that's a conflict. You keep on watching the movie or reading the story because you want to see how this person is going to defeat this person in the end. Another type of conflict we have is the man versus the self. Most of the time you watch movies, especially movies that talk about depression, you see people that are fighting against themselves. They have something that they want to achieve. They have something that they want to leave behind. Some people do drugs, and in the movie you're watching, you see they want to, like, the drugs is the conflict there against themselves. They're trying to, like, you're watching the movie because you want to see how this person is going to resolve this issue. Another type of conflict we have is the man versus the society. The person is against a group of people. For example, you have somebody who lives in a town, and then everybody in that town hates the person. They kind of look at the person like the person is a witch, and then now you see that's a conflict that you're trying to see how the person is going to resolve that against the society. I would like to put Robin Hood in this kind of situation, because Robin Hood is someone that, okay, he takes from the rich and gives to the poor. People don't actually know, but he's fighting against the society. You want to constantly see how he's going to be doing this. And then the last conflict that we're going to be talking about is the man versus the nature conflict. This one is actually usually one of the best because a lot of people are drawn to this kind of conflict. For example, you have a movie, people are in the movie and they're trying to combat a flood, they're trying to combat an earthquake. You're trying to see how these people are going to survive from an earthquake, or they're going to survive from a flood. So when telling a story, you need to become clear. Put a lot of conflicts in your stories so that people are actually going to people are actually going to listen to you. People are constantly going to watch you because they want to see what happens in the end. Which brings us to the most important part of the story. If you know you've watched Game of Thrones, you've watched Moana, you've watched Coco, all these movies, all these interesting stories, you've read Harry Potter, that things that you keep remembering because of those stories. Which brings us in the next point, which is the resolution. If you are telling a story and in the story there is no resolution in the story, it means your story is incomplete. If you have a conflict, it means you should have a resolution. This is one thing that makes people now to watch season 1, episode 1 and have to watch episode 2. Storytellers are very good because they make sure they put this thing there, they put the conflict so that the person has to watch episode 2 to get the resolution. So you see, you watch an episode and by the ending of the episode, something happens that you feel like you cannot just end here, you have to watch episode 2. And by the ending of episode 2, something happened. So what is usually done is that in the beginning of episode 1, they're solving a resolution from a previous episode, and then by the ending, they're giving a conflict so that you should watch the next episode, and then just like that, and they continue. Now, the resolution should always resolve the issue. This happens in all stories, happens in all movies, and happens in even YouTube videos. For example, if you are watching this video by now, you should know that you wanted to learn the top 5 elements that you need to be able to tell any story. And if you are someone who loves storytelling, I love that we connect, and I would love to pose this question. In the movie John Wick, I would love to know which type of conflict is found in the movie John Wick. Is he fighting against the society? Is he fighting against himself? Or is he fighting against nature? As well as, is he fighting against all these type of conflicts in the movie?